The United States commands the largest economy and military apparatus on Earth. Yet, for thousands of years, the landmass it occupies didn't even exist on the maps of the world's first empire builders. While North America sat in isolation, the actual incubator of early human civilization and global competition was locked entirely within Eurasia. Thousands of years ago, the Sumerians in the Middle East figured out how to record information, build cities, and organize the very first empires. This kicked off a brutal, millennial-long cycle of conquest. Empires absorbed their neighbors, scaled up their military logistics, and built massive, highly organized systems to control vast populations, like the Romans did across the Mediterranean. As Eurasian powers spent thousands of years fighting, innovating, and collapsing under their own weight, the Americas remained entirely removed from this geopolitical meat grinder. When European explorers finally managed to bridge the Atlantic Ocean, they weren't looking to settle a new continent. Christopher Columbus was simply trying to find a faster trade route to get Asian spices. When Spain and Portugal realized what they had stumbled upon, they immediately divided the globe between themselves. They focused almost entirely on southern regions that offered immediate, extractable wealth. The Spanish did send a few early expeditions up into North America, but when those explorers failed to find sprawling cities of gold and silver, they packed up and abandoned the territory. North America's apparent lack of easy plunder turned out to be its greatest historical shield. It kept the continent out of the imperial crosshairs, buying it valuable time while older empires slowly exhausted their treasuries. It took another 100 years before rival European powers, primarily Britain and France, finally started carving out permanent colonies in North America. As these colonial populations multiplied, they inevitably crashed into each other. The British and the French, allied with various indigenous tribes, fought a massive war to determine who actually controlled the middle of the continent. Britain won the territory, but the conflict nearly bankrupted them. To recoup their losses, the British Crown began heavily taxing the very American colonies they had just fought to protect. The colonists refused to pay these new taxes, without a voice in the British Parliament. That localized disagreement over revenue quickly escalated into an armed rebellion. In 1776, representatives from the 13 colonies formally severed their ties with Great Britain. They committed treason by collectively signing off on an entirely new, independent government. The United States emerged from this imperial fallout as a sovereign power. In less than a century, a loose collection of colonies had secured a seat at the table of global politics. Meanwhile, Europe descended into chaos following the French Revolution, and a military commander named Napoleon Bonaparte seized control. This map visualizes the sheer scale of the Louisiana Purchase. To fund his European wars, Napoleon sold this entire territory to the young United States. This secured total control over the Mississippi River, ensuring their interior economy couldn't be choked off. With the population doubling every 20 years, American settlers aggressively pushed west into these newly acquired lands, treating vast hunting grounds as unclaimed real estate. That rapid expansion triggered border disputes with their new neighbor, Mexico. The resulting war ended with the United States annexing Texas and the entire northern half of Mexican territory. By exploiting the distractions and bankruptcies of older powers, the United States achieved complete continental domination in a matter of decades. But reaching the Pacific Ocean presented the Americans with the exact same bottleneck that had stalled older empires. They had run out of contiguous land to conquer. While America hit its geographic limits, European empires were scrambling to sustain themselves. They were carving the African continent into rigid colonial territories, frantically competing for the world's last remaining resources. Before America could even consider expanding overseas, it had to survive its own internal contradictions. The Southern economy relied entirely on slavery, a divide so deep it fractured the country into a devastating, high-casualty civil war. The North's victory preserved the Union and abolished slavery. Emerging from the wreckage, the United States was heavily industrialized, unified by force, and positioned to step onto the global stage. America officially abandoned its policy of isolationism at the end of the 19th century. Targeting the fading Spanish Empire, the U.S. military seized Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Under leaders like Theodore Roosevelt, the United States deliberately built up the second largest navy on Earth. projecting aggressive power and enforcing its own sphere of global influence. To give that new naval fleet supreme mobility, the Americans executed a massive logistical triumph. They carved a path through Central America to build the Panama Canal, physically connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. By the early 20th century, every viable piece of territory on the globe was claimed, industrialized, and guarded by heavily armed, fiercely competitive empires. This 5,000-year chain reaction of imperial expansion had finally run out of room. With the United States now aggressively competing for global influence, the world's great powers were locked into a system of friction that would soon ignite.
Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more.